Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Gold and silver take sharp dives today, and may we see lower gold and silver prices leading up to election? Let's explore! What you're looking at is sort of a snapshot of where the market is or was. Look at these prices. Now watch when I do this. Boom. Down fairly sharply. Silver is down almost a full dollar from the last time there. $24.23. And gold is down almost $30, down 1.54%. As you can see, silver took a much bigger hit percentage-wise. And as is typically the case with gold and silver, but we're going to talk a little bit about this and about how this could be a trend continuing for the next 3 weeks. This is an article from Kitco. Sharp price declines for gold and silver as the U.S. dollar index rallies. That is the key here. Gold and silver futures prices are sharply down in midday U.S. trading Tuesday, and seeing pressure from solid gains in the U.S. dollar index on this day. December gold futures were last down $32.90 at $1,895.80, and December COMEX silver was last down $1.16 and has since recovered a bit from that. But nonetheless, it is very interesting indeed. Don't count the dollar out, especially when you measure it against other currencies out there. The safe haven metal bulls need a new fundamental news spark to take focus away from the recent overall tepid appreciation in the greenback that should arguably not be influencing the metals market that much. And that is kind of where we are at here. You know, the greenback is making moves, and unless the stock market takes a pretty big hit, the greenback is what's going to keep and pull gold up. Global stock markets were mixed overnight. U.S. stock indexes are weaker in midday trading. Featured on the stock markets this week will be the third quarter earnings report from major companies. We also have what President Trump has been touting for the third quarter economic data that's going to be coming. And he's betting that it's going to be really good. So that could potentially strengthen the dollar and everything else if it is the case. And in turn, meaning that prices for gold and silver may remain or drop a bit. We'll see. In fact, we may even see sub $20 silver again if things continue with the trends. And what's going on around the other nations around the world. Many major industrialized countries, including the U.S., just can't tamp down the COVID-19 infection spread. Johnson & Johnson has now paused its COVID vaccine trials and what was hoped to be a promising vaccine. In fact, they were the only company that was basically touting a one-shot deal for this vaccine. Other nations, that was not a COVID cough, by the way. Got a scratch in my throat. The other companies were going to be requiring multiple shots to implement the vaccine. In overnight news, China's imports in September were up 13.2% after falling 2.1% in August. Exports were up 9.9% in September. Both imports and exports beat market expectations and underscore how China's forced and nearly complete lockdowns for its COVID-19 hotspots have put the country's economy back on track much sooner than most of the free world's economies. And there's been reports out there saying that there's been great strides with treatments and with progress with the coronavirus. And even though we're seeing some of these spikes, we're maybe seeing weaker strains of it moving ahead here. Another important outside market news sees NYMEX crude oil prices are higher and trading around $40.35 a barrel. Remember those days when it was negative $39 a barrel? Not that long ago. The yield on the benchmark U.S. 10-year Treasury note is 0.75% today. Technically, December gold futures bulls still have the overall near-term technical advantage. Bulls' next upside price objective is to produce a close in December futures above solid resistance at the October high of $1,927. Bears' next term downside price objective is pushing futures prices below solid technical support in the September low of $1,851. In fact, that is kind of where we are at, or where some people think that gold could go in the next 3 weeks, is on that lower level here, below 1850. First resistance is seen at 1920, and then at today's high of 1930.60. Fresh support is seen at today's low of 1889, and then at last week's low of 1877. And we'll check those numbers again here. December silver futures have the overall near-term technical advantage. However, prices are still in a fledgling uptrend in the daily bar chart. Silver bulls' next upside price objective is closing prices above solid technical resistance at $27 an ounce. The next downside price objective for the bears is closing prices below solid support at the September low of $21.81. First resistance is seen at 25, and then at today's high of $25.31. Next support is seen at 24, and then at 23.50. And then it talks about copper, but we're not as interested about that. Looking back here, where is everything now? We're still quite a ways from the 1850 level for a gold, but silver is taking a bigger hit. It's almost a 3.9% drop, and this is something we're used to now with these kind of big moves we're seeing as of late. Silver takes a bigger hit than gold does, further widening the ratio between gold and silver. Now it's up to 78.49. Wasn't that long ago where it was 80 to 1. But that seems to be almost kind of the new normal. You know, that new normal now is anywhere between 75 and 80, which is still a big gap between the gold to silver ratio, but we've seen kind of wide movements in the price. Now, notwithstanding, and these numbers being where they're at today, you know, tomorrow is a new day, and there's other things and other factors geopolitically and emotionally that can have an effect on these markets and move the opposite end. If there is a big stock market hit and the dollar index is still high, well, we could see that pull the precious metals prices down with them, especially in the paper and electronic markets, where people decide, hey, we want to put our money into the safety of gold and silver as a hedge against economic instability. But as probably unlikely to be the case, as people have seen here in recent months, people move to the safety of cash. That's right, because of the dollar strength increasing, they're going to move to that safety. So the dollar index is playing a pretty big role here. But make no mistake, gold especially will not move and take as big a hit as silver will. And it's one thing we are seeing, and most constantly seeing, is that silver takes a bigger hit than gold. In fact, palladium, being a fringe precious metal, is the only metal that took a bigger hit with the markets today. Notwithstanding, on the converse side of this, is that when the gold price goes up, silver tends to outperform gold. But it's never outperformed gold so much that has gone into what I would consider what was referred to as the normal gold to silver ratio in the past. So those are things I mention constantly to kind of consider when you're making your decisions to purchase a metal, because this is a good buying opportunity for silver with a dollar drop. But what if tomorrow there's another $25 or $30 hit on gold, and then we may see another 50 to 75 cent drop in silver or more? So that's something we have to be prepared for, especially considering what other nations around the world are doing, and their strength of their currencies are weakening against the strengthening dollar. Because really, everybody's doing the same thing. They're adding liquidity into the markets, and they are, quantitative easing and doing modern monetary theory. It's just that our currency is the biggest player on the block, and so even though we're dirty too, the other nations' currencies are just as dirty, if not more dirty. And ours looks relatively attractive when all things are said and done. Now, politically, there's a lot to consider. Politics, I do believe, plays a role in these precious metal prices, especially with what's going to happen with the election and being nervous about the election. So we could have different polls come out that could move these numbers one way or the other, in spite of the dollar index. So that's something to consider as well. But there's not a lot of faith in the polls, especially considering last election cycle, presidential election cycle. And so I think that's part of the reason why we may be seeing this correlation between the dollar index and gold and silver. So we'll see how that plays out. But if the polls come back and show large increases, like let's say for Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden is pretty much ahead in these battleground states, and that the polls are saying that he's going to win this thing, both electorally and through the popular vote nationwide, well, if those numbers increase, that may make the markets nervous, because they're probably going to think that these polls aren't going to be that wide of a margin if they increase to where Trump could possibly lose the presidency. And so that is the only other way I can think of where the markets are going to move, save for some other geopolitical situation or more bad news from Johnson & Johnson and others. But the thing is with these vaccine trials, the fact that one person got sick out of the many thousands that are on this third phase really is not that big of a deal. According to this happens for these phase 3 trials, so this is not really that big of a deal. We do hope the person recovers soon and hope it's not serious, but we'll see how that plays out. And looking at it from a market standpoint, this is not really abnormal, although there is obviously a delay, and there could be more delays as other nations or the other companies come to fruition with this vaccine. But nonetheless, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with some of the reporting on COVID, hopefully. And so I think the markets are kind of reacting in some ways to that as well, gold and silver included. So very interesting news for the day. So these declines in gold and silver, is this the beginning of a trend, a 3-week trend moving up to the election? Some people think so. We'll find out. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.